The one good thing about Pasha is I get to choose the topic. The one bad thing about Pasha is I got to prepare the material. So here's a topic that I've been curious about for a very long time, and today I researched it. Very simple. And it's a good topic, I think, because it's not just a pshat and a chumash. It's a social study. It's an evaluation of good people, if you will. We all know the story that the day after Yom Kippur, in the year 2449, Moshe Rabbeinu spent 120 days on a mountain not eating, and the next morning, instead of having a large breakfast, he's giving a shiur. He's sitting and Yidden are in line. Moshe Rabbeinu basically was the inventor of giving dollars. It lasted exactly one day, and Yisrael ruined it. And it took about 3,000 years for the rebbe to come up and say, you know what, we're going back to giving dollars. Yisrael is not around to ruin it, we're going back to giving dollars. But that's what happened. Moshe sat, he wasn't standing like the rebbe stood by dollars. Moshe Rabbeinu sat by dollars. And everybody came by, and when you had a question, you asked. Moshe would sit there, and people would come along. As the pasuk says, which Rashi interprets to mean, people had arguments. There were several million Jews living in a camp. They were quite close to each other. And they had arguments about the real estate, and about property taxes, and about who owns the border, and where you can spill your sewage. So they came running to Moshe Rabbeinu to argue, and Moshe sat. One by one, people came, everyone said what they had to say. Moshe Rabbeinu paskin, next. And there was no hearings, and there were no appeals. Moshe heard the case, he gave the psak, and you moved on. And everybody understood that if Moshe Rabbeinu gives you a psak, first of all, it's true. Second of all, if you're going to appeal, you're going to look like a terrible person, and you're going to lose the appeal anyway. So it was very simple. Moshe Rabbeinu judged everybody. There was one judge of the entire Jewish nation. The good news and the bad news of Moshe Rabbeinu, the judge was, let's secure upon him a mishpat. You couldn't say to the judge, hey, you and I are buddies, we went to school together. Remember, we used to play in the playground, you got to look at me with a good eye. Moshe Rabbeinu had no favorites. Moshe Rabbeinu played in the playground. Moshe spent 80 years out of Mitzrayim. So Moshe Rabbeinu was a fair judge. You couldn't bribe him, you couldn't finagle him, and Yidden came and stood in line, and Moshe was judging every person. Jethro, Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, sees this, and he says to Moshe, this is ridiculous. He says, you're going to ruin yourself and you ruin the people. This is a whole day in line to hear a case. A whole day stand in line to hear a case? So Moshe Rabbeinu says, of course. Of course, they want me to judge their cases. They don't want to trust anybody else. They want me to judge their cases. There's a great story to support that position. It's a wonderful piece of Chassidish history. Here's the story. The Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim, as you may or may not know, were wanderers. The Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim, especially when he was a hidden tzaddik, were wanderers. They'd come to a place, they'd park themselves in the shul, they'd sleep on a bench, and they had bread and water with them, whatever they brought with them. They needed nobody's help. And they'd stick around town for like 4, 5, 6 months, and slowly but surely the people would get to know them. They would start teaching the Torah to the little kids, to the big kids, to the men, to the women, and they would stick around for a period of time. And during the period that they were in town, people came to see them as incredibly fair, incredibly equitable, incredibly fair. And it got to the point that any time people had a conflict, the machlekes, business, they would come to this tzaddik of the Baal Shem Tov's chevra. He would hear the case, and he would paskin, and everybody was happy. If he stuck around long enough, the Goyim found out about this. And the Goyim preferred to have a Jewish rabbi oversee a case between them and the fellow Jew than a Goyish judge, because they knew that if the Baal Shem Tov's Talmud oversaw your case, you were always going to get a fair hearing. There was never going to be favoritism. And the law was going to be fixed as is necessary. A kid said, one of these Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, his name was Reb Koppel. And Reb Koppel used to travel around and visit different places, and he would park himself in a city. He'd spend a certain amount of time, and people got to know him, he got to know them, he was Makar people. The whole idea was to get the Yidden in Poland, who were so broken and so poor and so ignorant, to develop their appetite for Torah. That was the plan. This couple had a habit of saying all day and all night, Shivisi Hashem l'nei Yisrael. All day, Shivisi Hashem, I praise God in front of him. Shivisi Hashem, this was his mantra. Like we say, we want Mashiach now, or Yechia Dinenu. He said, Shivisi Hashem l'nei Yisrael. I praise God in front of him all the time. Shivisi Hashem, this was his line. He was so, consistent about saying Shivisi Hashem. he developed a nickname. His nickname was Couple Shivisi. They called him Couple Shivisi. The Goyim just called him plain Shivisi. The Goyim called him Shivisi. They had no idea what Shivisi meant. But Shivisi means that I see Hashem in front of me all the time. So the Yidden called him Couple Shivisi and the Goyim called him Shivisi. And it was a Jew and a Gentile who had a big fight over some kind of business. And had to go to court. So the Jew says, you probably want to go to a secular court. No, Shivisi is good for me, the guy says. Shivisi Hashem, like someone good for me. So they come into the Beis Hamed looking for Shivisi, and Shivisi's gone. A couple of Shivisi moved to the next town to repeat the performance of being Makar Pasha to Yid. So the Yid says to this guy, okay, let's go to the local judge, who was either Jewish or non-Jewish, and he'll hear the case and he'll decide. And the guy says to the Yid, in Russian, he says, I heard from Rabbi Shvei in Yiddish, Ob Shivisi is nito, is kein zach nito. The guy says, if there's no Shivisi, there's nothing, there's no case. Now literally he meant the person, but contextually, if there's no Shivisi Hashem Negdi Samad, there's nothing. In other words, you want to be judged by a judge who's honorable, who's honest, who speaks truth, and this is what Moshe is doing. Moshe is personally presiding over the case that the Jewish people had, so everybody gets a fair hearing. A Jew and everyone gets a fair hearing. And Jethro objects. Yisrael says it's not realistic. Yisrael says to Moshe Rabbeinu, this can't work. I get it. You want to give people a fair hearing, but you're only one person. Novel Tibel. Novel's going to fall apart. And he suggests to set up a system of courts. Sari Alafim, Sari Meye, Sari Chamishim, everybody knows that story, right? But Yisrael doesn't just tell Moshe Rabbeinu that he can't be the only judge and they should set up a system of Sari Alafim, Sari Meye, Sari Chamishim, Saris. He says to him, number one, you have to consult the Eibishter. Say Hamlech Legvura, talk to Hashem. If Hashem wants you to be the only judge, then you're going to have to be the only judge. V'tzivcha lekim v'yachol ta'amayid. If Hashem will allow you to set up a court system where Moshe doesn't have to hear every single case, you'll be able to survive. You'll live longer, they'll live longer, people are not going to be nervous wrecks standing all day in the light to meet you, and so on. And of course, Moshe consults the Eibishter, and the Eibishter agrees that Moshe doesn't have to judge every Jew, and that lasted till our generation. When the Rebbe started giving dollars, now that's going back to Moshe Rabbeinu, before Yisrael mixed in. So the first thing he tells you is Moshe consult with the Eibishter. But then he says to him, I want you to know how to choose a judge. Ve'ata techaze, you should see. Mikol ha'am, from the entire nation, anshe chayil, men of valor, anshe irei elikim, God-fearing people, anshe emes, people of truth, saynei batza, who hate money, ve'samta aleim, you should place them with the Jewish people, sari alafim, sari meir, sari chamishim, and sari saris. So Yisrael is telling Moshe Rabbeinu how to choose a shofet, how to choose a court judge who's going to be honorable and equitable and trustworthy and without biases. So it says in the pasuk, Anshe Chayil, which translates in English as men of valor. No one knows what valor means, but it's a great word. Yirei Elikim, God-fearing people. Anshe Emes, people of truth. Seinei Batza, hate money. It says in our parsha. So in our parsha, Yisrael prescribes the criteria for being a good judge. The criteria of being a good judge, as it's written in the Chumash, doesn't say one single word about law. Right? Anshe Chayil, men of valor, doesn't mean Talmidei Chachamim. Yirei Elikim, God-fearing people, doesn't mean Talmidei Chachamim. Anshe Emes, people of truth, even that doesn't mean Talmidei Chachamim. Seinei Batza, people who hate money, I don't know, people who hate money, you trust people who hate money, I have a problem with those people. Right? So it says in Sifri, not in our Pasha, in Pasha's Dvarim, that actually Yisrael gave Moshe Rabbeinu 7 indicators. I want you to choose judges, and he gave Yisrael told Moshe Rabbeinu 7 criteria. You know who could be a good judge to judge Jewish people, to hear their cases, and oversee their law? They have to have 7 criteria. Okay? And this is today's class. Today's class is an analysis of Yisrael's assessment, Yisrael's judgment, Yisrael's opinion. To be a member of Sanhedrin, to be a judge in a Jewish court, to listen to people's cases, and to be able to judge people with fairness, you have to have 7 criteria, 7 rules. Only problem is only 4. In our parsha, it's not 7, it's only 4. So the Sifri, which is in Dvarim, has a commentary from the Ravid, from the great Rishonim. And the Ravid says that even though in the Pasuk it says 4, there's actually 7, because the 4 that are written in the Chumash don't speak about his knowledge of law. They just speak about his character. Right? Anshe Chayil, people of valor. Yirei Elkim, God-fearing people. Anshe Emet, people of truth. Seinei Bas, hate money. Those are nice characteristics in personality, but you have to be Talmud Chacham. So the Ravid therefore says that Yisrael actually said 3 more characteristics for a total of 7. There are 7 criteria that are necessary for a person to be considered a judge amongst the Jewish people. So what I want to do right now is I want to tell you what the Ravid, this whole shir is a Ravid on the Sifri in Dvarim. It's not even an Parsha. Okay? So there's some confusion and there's different opinions. So I'm going to teach it to you one way, and I'm going to talk about it at length. At the end of the class, assuming the clock doesn't have heartlessness, clocks are always heartless, by the way, I'll give you another version of it. We're going to be studying 7 midos, 4 from our parsha and 3 more that I mentioned in Parshas Devarim. And here they are. I'm going through the list one more time. Okay, in our parsha you have number 1, Anshe Chayil, men of valor. Number 2, Yirei Elokim, God-fearing people. Number 3, Anshe Emes, people of truth. Number 4, Seinei Bas, people who hate money. Number 5 is equivocal. It's hard to place, because if you count number 5, you can end up with 8. Anoshim, they need to be men. And Rashi says tzaddikim. Number 6, Chachamim, they have to be wise. They have to be intuitive. Yeah. Number 7, they need to be nevoinim. Nevoinim means meiv and dov, they have to have the power of induction. You tell them one thing and they can deduce or deduce or induce from what you tell them. They can determine something else. And the last characteristic is yuduim. Yuduim means people that people know. Don't choose the guys who hide in the back of their shoulder that nobody knows. Choose people that are known. Now I just gave you 8, not 7. In our parsha you have 4. Anshe Chayil, men of valor. Yirei Elokim, people who fear God. Anshe Emes, people of truth. Seinei Bas, who hate money. And then in Dvarim I got 4 more. Anoshim, men, which I translate as tzaddikim. Chachamim, wise. Nevoinim means understanding. And Yeduim means people who are well known. People know who they are. They have a reputation. They've been around. And because they've been around, that we know their, as they say it in American politics, we know their record. We know how they vote. We know how they judge. So how do you deal with the fact that the Sifri says that Yisrael gave Moshe Rabbeinu 7 criteria and the Chumash have 8? My answer is that the word Anoshim in Parshas Devarim and the word Anshe Chayil in our Parsha are the same. So if Anoshim in Devarim and Anshe Chayil, our Parsha, are the same, you're down to 7. Only problem is the Mefarshim translate the word Anoshim in a variety of different ways, and it doesn't work in all the different ways that are presented. So here's what's going to happen, Rabbi Yossi. I just gave you facts. Okay, if I lost you in those facts, don't worry about it. I am simply going to study with you what says in Torah, Chumash, Chazal, and Rishonim about how a person is qualified to be a judge, whether it's 7 criteria or 8 criteria. We'll leave that for the politicians and for the experts. I'm studying with you the midas that a person needs to judge another person. Number 1, Anshe Chayil. Anshe Chayil means men of valor. What's valor? You know what valor is? Eishes Chayil, a woman of valor. What's a woman of valor? What's a woman of valor? My wife, right? Why? Because if I dare suggest she's not a woman of valor, I'll never hear the end of it, right? She's a woman of valor, right? What's valor? What's Eishes Chayil, a woman of valor? What's valor? I don't know what valor means. I guess that's a good translation. Valor means people who have guts, right? Who are not afraid. They believe in things, they stand for things, and they're not afraid to stand up for what they believe. So the first thing Yisrael says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to get good judges? Choose people who are bold. What does Rashi say? Rashi says Anshe Chayil means people who are rich. Now, since when is rich a characteristic that qualifies you to be a judge? So Rashi answers, because people who are wealthy will take no bribes. There's no chanufa. You cannot bribe them. You cannot flatter them. They're okay. A rich person is so self-sufficient and so self-secure. You can't bribe him. You can't flatter him. He speaks the truth as it is. Now understand, when Rashi says Anshe Chayil means a rich man, it doesn't mean every rich man that you daven with in shul, who competes for 125 times Chay from after Yoina. When it says in the Pasuk, Anshe Chayil means a rich man that he cannot bribe, Rashi means the Mishnah Masechta Avos. Eizehu Asher Hasameach B'chelke. Anshe Chayil means a man of valor, a person of principle, who's got guts, is not afraid. He's rich. What does it mean he's rich? You can't bribe him. But what makes him rich? What makes him rich? So you've heard this speech from me 25 times. I don't have a lot of good things to say, so I say the same things over and over and over again. The Mishnah says, Ezel Asher, who's rich? I know who's rich. Shalom Berdrizin is rich. He's the richest man in Crown Heights. He's rich, right? Now what happens? Someone moves into Crown Heights and lives on Crown Street next to him, who's got 5 times as much money as he does. He davens in a good shul also and sits in the front the whole week handing out checks. So he's not so rich anymore. Rich is a subjective thing. Who's rich? The person who has the most money in town. That's not complicated. Someone counts out more money, the old rich guy becomes not so rich. If 2 people come up with money, he's even less rich. There is a subjectivity to it. There's a subjectivity to it. So the Mishnah says, is there wealth? Is there such a thing as a rich man that no matter who comes to town, he'll still be rich? Is there a rich man that no matter who lives next door, no matter what happens to his own personal finances, he remains rich? Is there a way to have wealth that you can't lose? Is there a way to have wealth that you can be living, you can be flanked by multi-billionaires and you're still rich living in the middle? Sure. Just like your life, that's it. A person who's happy with what he has is rich. Why? He doesn't need what the other guy has. So when the first Yisrei says to his son-in-law, Hezekiah Moshe, you're the rabbi and you're the God of Yisrael and you're the Navi of the Eibishter, I got common sense. I live in the real world. There's like 5 or 6 different sichos of the Rebbe where people are correcting Moshe Rabbeinu. 5 or 6. There's Yisrei and there's Aaron and there's Pinchas and there's the daughters of Tzlavcha. And a bunch of people are correcting Moshe Rabbeinu. And in each case, the Rebbe says, what's the issue? That Moshe lives in the sky. He says to Moshe, you're a holy man, but I'm a practical man. You understand the Torah in theory. I understand in the world. You can't do this yourself. And he's presenting Moshe Rabbeinu with a suggestion of how to choose judges. Number 1, choose rich people. What does it mean rich? A person who likes himself. He's happy with what he has. A person like that you cannot bribe. He can be poor. But if he's a sameach b'chelke, if what he has is enough, he's rich. He can preside on legal cases because he can't bribe it. This is rule number 1. There's a Mechilta, which is in Pashas Yisrei. The Sifri is in Dvarim, the Mechilta is in Yisrei, Shmais. Rabbi Lazar Madoi says, what's Anshe Chayil Bali Avtocha? Avtocha means people who are trustworthy, their word is good. A person who's trustworthy means a person gives you his word, he's not going to change his mind, he's not going to flip-flop, he's not going to think about it and come back to another verdict. That's called Bali Avtocha. So it's a different definition. Rashi's definition of Anshe Chayil means people who are rich. Rabbi Lazar Madoi's definition of Anshe Chayil's Bali Avtocha, people whose word is good. And then there's a Teda Shleima, his Hinikel is not here, that says Gibonim b'Torah. Anshe Chayil means warriors in Torah. Anshe Chayil means people of valor. If you are the kind of guy who can debate Torah and not back down, you can hold your position. You hold things, you argue things, you defend your position. If you are sharp in Chesed Mishpat, you have opinions and you can defend them and you can argue them. That's the first criteria for sitting on the court of law. So we have 3 definitions of Anshe Chayil. Right? Number 1, rich. Number 2, trustworthy. And number 3, learned. Go ahead.
Doesn't that also mean like really sharp-minded?
Tell me how.
You stand by your opinion no matter what, you argue for that the whole time. That's not a very good trait.
It doesn't say that. It says Gibonim b'Torah, warriors in Torah.
What does that mean?
You know how to fight. You know how to lose, but you know how to fight. Part of fighting is losing. You're not using a sword. You're arguing ideas. Right? Some people don't know how to fight. So what do? Like me. The first sign of danger is they run and hide under the table. Finish. Cowards. That's not going to know how to fight. Wait. Other people don't know how to back down. They'll have the teeth fall out of their mouth, but they're not going to change their minds. They don't know how to fight either. They can be a judge. Gibayim b'tayra means people know how to fight and they know how to lose. They know when, as they say in Yiddish, v'u'ayin v'u'eis, they can sit in the court of law. That's exactly what it means. Okay, so in other words, your point is well taken, but in fact, the implication is Gibayim b'tayra means they're warriors, that means they know when to fight and when not to fight. So that's number one. Rule number one, to sit in the court of law, you have to be Anshe Chayil. Rashi says that means you have to be rich, unbribable. The Mechilta says you have to be a man whose word is good. And the Torah Shleimah says you have to know how to fight in Torah. Number two, Yirei Elokim, God-fearing. Yirei Elokim means God-fearing. I'm afraid of Hashem. I'm afraid of Hashem. What does it mean I'm afraid of Hashem? Hashem is a mean old guy, right? He doesn't hear well. He has no teeth. He doesn't taste his food when he eats it. One of his eyes doesn't see color anymore. And he walks with a limp. And he's missing 5 teeth, so he talks with a lisp. And he's got so many grudges against so many people because they're handsome and young, right? That's what the Eibush is, yeah. So you're afraid of him. He's an angry old guy with a beaked nose who's looking to start up with people because he's angry and old and kvetchy. No, that's not God and that's not Yirei Elokim. The Eibush is young and healthy and strong and beautiful. Yirei Elokim means I'm afraid of Hashem, not because I'm afraid Hashem is going to hurt me, but because I have a sense of His awe. I have a brother who was a shliach who says one of the hardest things to teach, not from people, is Yiras Hashem, because the words being afraid of God is very disturbing to Americans. So he uses the word respect. Yira means I have a real sense of Hashem, and I am awed by Him. I take Him seriously. In Chumash, you have a very poignant event. Yosef HaTzadik is playing with his children's brains, with his brother's brains, right? He's playing with them. He's toying them. The cat plays with a mouse. He's getting them all confused. He's trying to befuddle them, confuse them, frighten them, basically. And he puts them in jail, right? And then he wakes up in the morning, you know what, you can go. I'm going to keep Shimon, the rest of you go home. What does he say? Es ha'elakim ani yorei. I'm afraid of God. And because I'm afraid of God, I cannot be excessive. I cannot be brutal in my distribution of punishment. I'm going to let you all go home. I'm just going to keep Shimon and go to your father and come back with Binyamin and so on and so forth. But I fear God. A Yerei Shamayim is a very big deal. I fear God. Not I'm afraid He's going to zap me. I have a sense of His presence. To be a court judge, right? It says in the Pasuk, Elikim Nitzal Ba'adas Keil. The judges sit and Hashem stand. They say to Chumash Rashi. It's mentioned in Parshas Mishpatim, which is next week. Elikim Leisakav, Nos Ba'amcha Leisoyer. Rashi says, judges are called Elikim. They sit, and the Eibush is Bekedav Elikim Yishbai. The Eibush stands above the judges as they preside over a case, if they have fear of heaven, Yiras Shamayim. So Yosef says to his son, the second requirement to be a judge, to oversee financial deals of the Jewish people, is have to be afraid of Hashem. Not afraid Hashem is going to hurt me. Have to be responsible for the fact that if I make a mistake, the Eibush is going to say, you cost the Jew money. You cost the Jew time. You cost the Jew convenience. You cost the Jew nerves. You have to fear of heaven. Now, I'll tell you a ma'aseh which is negate to somebody in this room. There was a bacher in Achei Temimim whose name was Yisrael Neach. Yisrael Neach, more than one bacher is Yisrael Neach. Yisrael Neach, they call him Yisrael Neach HaGadol. In the Bible, there are 2 Yisrael Neachs, a big one and a little one. So the biggest Yisrael Neach, they called him Yisrael Neach HaGadol. He lived 99 and a half years. He came to his stop, he forgot to get off. So he went around twice. He was a very Yisrael Neach Blinitsky. My sister is married to his grandson. Yisrael Neach was a very big chassid. Yeah, Yisrael Neach. So there's a biography of Yisrael Neach, and there's a really, really crazy story. The minig was that when the Bachar reached a certain age, they were drafted into the Russian army. I think when they were as young as 17. Now the Russian army didn't need soldiers. They had plenty of soldiers. But the Russian army needed control. So they didn't need soldiers, but they had conscription anyway. They had mandatory draft anyway, just to control the country. And soldiers who served, it wasn't fun. From Yidden didn't do well in any army, certainly not in the Russian army. So they wanted to get out of it. And there were 101 ways to get it. There were legal ways of getting it, all kinds of loopholes. And it was called priziv. Priziv means when you came to the city where you lived or you were called, you presented yourself to the military authorities, and they would look you over and decide if you could serve or not serve. The custom in Lubavitch was that Simchas Torah morning, all the boys who reached the age in priziv would wait before davening by the Rebbe Rashab's room. He'd walk out, each one would approach the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would give different advice to each bacher. You knew from the Rebbe Rashab's words whether you were going to serve or not. You know, if he said the Rebbe should have helfen, it meant one thing. You knew from how he gave you a bracha whether you were actually going to serve or you were going to get out of it. One by one, the boys would go over, and the Rebbe Rashab would give eitzes, and the eitzes were interesting. Sometimes they go show up in a different city, come a little late, all kinds of weird kinds of counsel. It was all Ruach HaKodesh, and a lot of Bacharim, many Lubavitcher boys served, don't kid yourself, but a lot of Bacharim using the advice of the Rebbe Rashab got out of the draft. Yisrael Meach was a Bacharil, was probably 20 years old, so you're talking the early 1901 or something like that. Comes over to the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab says, go to this in this city. There's a yid by the name Rabbi Yitzchak Disne. These are the Rebbe Rashab's words. You'll marry his daughter and he'll help you with the draft. Those are the Rebbe's words. You'll marry his daughter and help you with the draft. Yitzchak Disne was an old man. He was a chassid in Tzemach Tzedek. He was a big chassid. Anyway, Shalmech doesn't know no chachmas. He got to the train, he goes to that city, which I forgot the name of it. He knocks on the door of Yitzchak Disne. There opens the door and he says, yeah. They're coming from Lubavitch. The Rebbe Rashab told me I should marry your daughter and you help me with the draft. And the guy says, excuse me? Well, he didn't hear. The Rebbe Rashab said I should marry your daughter and help me with the draft. Excuse me? In other words, he married his daughter and helped him with the draft. But it became complicated. What is this? Yitzchak Disne was older than the Rebbe Rashab. Forget about older than Nisonech. He was older than the Rebbe. Him and his wife got on a train and they went to Lubavitch. What's this? He sent the boy to my house to marry my daughter. He never met her. She never met him. Whoa, what's this? Anyway, somehow it was arranged that when they showed up in Lubavitch, Yisrael Nech's parents also showed up in Lubavitch. And both couples went into the Rebbe Rashab together. There was 5 people in the room. The Rebbe, 2 fathers and 2 mothers, and there was a negotiation. The Rebbe Rashab acted as the negotiator. And Rabbi Yitzchak Disne says to the Rebbe Rashab, you send a guy to my house to marry my daughter that didn't even meet. What's this? Who's this boy? And the Rebbe Rashab said these words. When he sits alone in the room, he's also fearful of God. That's what he said. And they said, Ma'al Tov and broke a plate, you see. That's the Yirei Elokim. We all need one another to say from. We know that. Yeah? To be in your own room by yourself, and there's nobody around but God. And you can do whatever you want. And to serve the Eibishter, that's called Yirei Elokim. And Yisrael says to his son-in-law, the second criteria is he has to be God-fearing. He has to be afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he has to take the judgment seriously. When you deal with the Chazal say, Din Pruta Din Meya, whether the case is for 10 cents or the case is for $1 million, you have to take each case with all the earnestness. Because Elikim Nita Ba'adas Ke, when you judge, Hashem stands. You're sitting, and Hashem stands above the Sanhedrin, and there needs to be fear of heaven. That's the second criteria. The Mechilta, again, brings a different shot from Raza Amudai, which I find very interesting. He translates Yirei Elokim. They know how to make pshara. You know what pshara means? Pshara means compromise. Moirai v'rabaisai. I imagine that none of you have ever been in a court of law. I imagine that none of you have ever been in a Beis Din where there was a case where one guy's going to win and one guy's going to lose. I have. Not too many times, and it wasn't too personal, but I have. Let me tell you the facts of life. You lose the case when you walk into the court, even if you win, because you make enemies for life like you never saw. If you have a fight with another Jew, settle. You fight with another Gentile, settle. Going to court, even if you know for sure you're going to win, is so costly, not in money, but in relationships. Torah says pshara. V'asis ha'yasher v'atev. Kisas ha'atev v'yasher bein ha'v'gach ha'atev zu pshara. The Gemara says to Halach and Shulchan Aruch that the job of a Rav is not to oversee a din Torah, but to settle it. People come in, they're screaming at each other, they hate each other, they're angry at each other, a landlord and a tenant, business partners, a husband and a wife, Rahman al-Islam. The Torah says the Rav's job is to do everything in his power not to make it into a legal case. Because if you make it into a legal case, the din is Yaakov, the din is Hahar. There's no compromise. If a judge judges, he has to say the law no matter who wins, no matter who loses. And you have L'takir Panam HaMishpat, right? There's two sides. One judge is going to be nice to the rich man in town because he doesn't look bad. And the other judge is going to be nice to the poor person because it's Nebuch and Achmanas on him. Both of those are sins. A judge has to say the law the way the law is, no matter who wins and who loses. So the Torah says to a judge, your job, make the Torah not happen. And this is true in American law also. The best way to deal with differences is to settle. You win a little, you lose a little, but you don't have an enemy for life. You go, the Gemara says, it's one of those Gemaras that you can never forget. The Gemara says, Mipnei ma nech beis Elokeinu, why was the Beis Hamikdash destroyed? And the Gemara answers, listen to this. Mipnei she'amidu divrei al din Torah. Because Jewish people insisted whenever they had an argument, go to the Rav and Paskin. What's the law? What's the law? You come into the judge, what's the law? And the judge said, what do we argue about? We argue about 50 cents? You take a quarter. No, what's the law? Everything had to be black and white, legal. Kosher v'yosher. That's not a civilization. People settle. People make mistakes. People are wrong. People forget. People lie and cheat. But you live in the world. You don't want to have enemies. You settle. And the Chazal say that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because people insisted on following the law to the letter. What's wrong in following the law to the letter? The Torah says in a normal civilization, people give in. They compromise, they forgive, they forget, they overlook. That's how it's supposed to be. So according to this Mechilta, the definition of Yirei Elikim is a judge who's God-fearing, and he's God-fearing to the extent that he avoids the case. Not he judges it carefully, he does everything in the power there shouldn't be a case. He fears God so much that he says to the two, let's settle. Let's find a place where both of us can be happy and let's walk away. That's the second criteria. Let's talk quick. I have no time. The first criteria is Anshe Chayil, men of valor. And we had three definitions for that, right? Rich people, is that just Mechalke? Honorable, honest people, trustworthy people, and Gibayim B'Torah. The second is Yirei Elikim. We have two definitions of that. God-fearing people who are going to judge cases carefully, and God-fearing people to the extent that they avoided the Torah in the first place. They convinced the two combatants to settle. Pshat. Number three, Anshe Emes, people of truth. People of truth. People of truth means a person whose word is good. I'm going to say something which is going to get me into so much trouble. I don't know why I'm saying it. And don't even ask me why. But I recently came across a Jew. He's such a complicated person. And I'm not here to judge or not to judge one way or another. His name was Meyer Lansky. You ever heard of Meyer Lansky? Meyer Lansky was a mafianik. He was a Jewish guy who was best friends with one of the most important Italians in New York City. Meyer Lansky was a ganav. Meyer Lansky never killed a person, but a lot of people died because of him. A lot. Meyer Lansky made millions and millions and millions of dollars in gambling. And people who know will tell you that Meyer Lansky's money, number one, was used to destroy the Nazi Party in the United States of America. And number two, it built the state of Israel. Those Jewish mafianiks spent millions of dollars on Israel. Meyer Lansky was a criminal. He was a criminal, he was. He was organized crime, he was Jewish mafia. But everybody knew that if Meyer Lansky gave you his word, it was as good as gold. That's a fact. He was a ganif and he was an etzeach. But if he said this is the term, they shook your hand, you kept your word, he kept his word. His word was good. I'm not saying that he's called Anshe Emes. But it's Linktree in cup. I was talking about Meir probably a week ago, but in my head he's bouncing around like a billiard ball. That they said, Goyim said, that Meir Lansky's word was better than 100 contracts. A man of truth. Now, again, he's not a man of truth. I'm just saying it. Maybe I'm saying it Le'ilin Nishmasi. I don't even know why I'm saying it. Anshe Emes, people of truth. Everybody knows what an honest man is. Everybody's an honest man. An honest man is an honest man. And some people just got it. Some people just have it. Honest people. And to be a judge, you need to have a tendency towards honesty. Your nature has to be that you don't like to tell a lie. You want to say the truth. Anshe, people who tell the truth. Zog in the Memes. It's a simple thing, but it's a very important criteria. If you want to be a judge, you have to look for truth. In other words, if you, as they say, legislate from the bench, one of the biggest problems in America is that a lot of our judges know what they want the psak to be. So they spin the law to serve them. That's not Anshe Emes. That's Anshe spin. Anshe Emes means I am not the creator of the laws, I am only the interpreter of the laws, right? In America, who makes the laws? The judiciary, not Biden. The Congress. The House of Representatives, the Senate. United States, our Constitution allows for the creation of new laws. They're called the lawmakers. The two houses of Congress, the senators and the House of Representatives, there's 100 senators, and 425 representatives, they have a right to make law. Judges only interpret law. A judge takes the law that the Congress gives and applies it. An honorable judge wants to know what the truth of the intent of the Constitution, the intent of the Congress was. A judge with an agenda is going to spin it to serve his purposes. Anshe Emes means I am a person looking for the truth. I'm a judge. I may personally disagree with my own ruling, but this is the law of the land. That's called Anshe Emes. The third criteria for being a judge, you have to be a person who's leaning towards Emes. Rashi says, "Vos meint Emes," that you're trustworthy, you're reliable, your word is good. The Mechilta is something very, very strange. I don't understand why the Mechilta says it, but the Mechilta says the definition of Anshe Emes is like Chanina ben Deis. What's the story? It says in the Mefarshim, Rabbi Chanina ben Deisa found the stone, and he wanted to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash, but the stone weighed 50 tons. Rabbi Chanina ben Deisa had no money and no connections and no people, no garnished. So a Malach came along, and the Malach said to Chanina ben Deisa, "You put your hand underneath, and I'll take it to Yerushalayim." Rabbi Chanina ben Deisa put his hand down, and the Malachim carried the stone, and he ended up finding Yerushalayim. He was able to donate it to the Beis HaMikdash. The Medrash brings this story of Chanina ben Deisa for Anshe Emes. If that's how you translate Anshe Emes doesn't mean people tell the truth. That's what it means. Anshe Emes means people who mean it with their whole heart. Anshe Emes is not a person of truth that I don't lie. My Yiddishkeit is true. You know how true my Yiddishkeit is? That if I need to deliver a stone that weighs so many tons to the Beis HaMikdash, and I have no means of carrying it, because I mean it with such emes, the Eibush should send the Malach to help me. So there's two definitions of Anshe Emes. The first definition is that you tell the truth. The second definition is your involvement with Hashem is so real that you can call that person's avodah emes, like Rabbi Chanina ben Deisa. That's the third requirement to be a judge. Number 4, Soinei Botza. People who hate money. You know the old story, right? If you want to find a person who hates money, very simple, pay him. You pay him enough, he'll hate money too, whatever you want. For Geld kann man alles schaffen. Rabbi Yossi used to tell me this. For Geld kann man alles schaffen. For enough money, you can guide anything you want, even a person who hates money. A person who hates money means he can be very rich, but he appreciates what money does to you. Soinei Botza means that it's not that he doesn't want money. He's happy to have money, but he's very, very not happy to define himself by money. You know, there's an old Yiddish expression that there's 3 things that work, and if they don't work, you just need a little more. Chassidus makes you into a chassid. If not a chassid yet, learn some more chassidus. Alcohol has to make you drunk. If you're not drunk yet, have some more. And money makes you crazy. If you're not crazy yet, get some more. Soinei Botza is the person who knows that. He can be very wealthy, but he hates the worship of the money. He doesn't mind the money, but he hates the preoccupation. He hates the fact that it's such a big deal. Meaning, he doesn't define himself by his wealth. To him, wealth is what you do with it. But the wealth itself is hateful. The fourth criteria for being a judge that oversees legal cases in Jewish people is a person who has, if I may say it in other words, a healthy relationship with money. And there are very few people like that. In the real world, when it comes to money, almost everybody becomes very weird. You know that? I always tell people, and I believe this from my own experience, there's two types of money in this world, just two types. What's in my pocket and what's not in my pocket. Not what's mine and not mine, what's in my pocket. If I have your money in my pocket, it's mine. If I have your money and my money in your pocket, it's yours. That's how the brain works. Now, it's not ethical, it's not honest, it's not true. But if you know anything about money, that's what people think. A guy raised $1 million. Now he has to pay his teachers, right? He hesitates. Why? I got $1 million. I pay my teachers. I have nothing left. But you raised the money to pay the teachers. But I got $1 million. Shainei Batze is the person who doesn't get caught in that trap that almost everybody gets caught in. And that, Rabbi Yossi, is the fourth criteria. And the Mechilta says that they hate their own money, let alone somebody else. In other words, again, I don't think it means they hate money. They hate what money does to you. So again, Achei Temimim means they're principled, right? You can't bribe them. They're trustworthy. They're good. They know how to fight a battle in Torah. Yirei Elikim means they fear God in judgment, or they avoid judgment altogether, making compromise. Anshe Emes, they tell the truth, or they mean it with such an emes that the Eibishter helps them. And Shainei Batze means they hate what money does to people. These four are in our parsha. Then you get four more in Dvarim. Number one, Anoshim. And again, it's hard to figure out because the Free says 7 and the Poel you got 8. Number one, Anoshim. It says Rashi Tzadikim. Tzadikim, okay? Now, there are other people who define Anoshim. The other people define Anoshim in a different way, which makes Anoshim mean the same thing as Anshe Chaya. There is another Tereh Shlema that says Anshe Chaya means Bailei Shem Tov. Anshe Chaya means people with a good reputation. If you're going to translate Anshe Chaya as people with good reputation, that's quite close to Anoshim. So the fifth criteria is tzaddikim, righteous people, okay, and people who have a good reputation, righteous people, finished. Anyway, the next one, which is really 5-2, is Chachamim. Chacham means wise people. Rabbi say, what's a wise person? What's a wise person? A wise person has good intuition. A wise person feels. He guesses correctly. He intuitively knows. He just knows. A wise person intuitively knows what's true and false, what's good and bad, right and wrong. That's a wise person. Okay? But Chochmah is only one quality. To be intuitive, to have a good sense of guessing. After you're a Chacham, you have to be a Maven. A Maven is somebody who's called a Maven David Miteich David. After you hear the case, and you intuitively know who's right and wrong, you study. And you examine. And you analyze. You don't allow your first sense of who's right and who's wrong to be the final criteria for your case. You dig deeper and you dig deeper and you dig deeper, and the Rashi expression is Maven David B'Teich David. You figure out one thing from the next, so that you test whether your initial intuition was correct or incorrect. So criteria 5 or 6 is Chachamim, wise people. Wise people are intuitive, and the 6th criteria is Nevoinim. Nevoinim are Maven David B'Teich David. They don't trust their intuition. They pursue it further and they measure to see if their intuition is correct. Rashi says that a Chacham is like a person who's in charge, a money changer. Money changers, right, you give them 100, they give you $100 singles, right? But one of the jobs of money changers in the old world was to examine the quality of the coin. Money changers expert in coins. Number one, they had to know what currency it was. Number two, they had to know if it was still in use. Number three, they had to know if it was still good, if it was faded. So money changers were experts at currency. That was part of their job. So the Rashi says, a Chacham is somebody, you bring him currency, he looks at it and tells you what it's worth. A Maven is somebody that if he's nothing, no one brings him any currency, he goes out into the street, he goes over, he says, let me see your wallet. He takes out your currency, he tells you what it is. The Chacham is happy to answer a question when you ask him. The Maven is compulsive. If nobody's asking him any questions, he goes and looks for questions to answer. So to be a member of the Sanhedrin, you have to be a Chacham, which means you have to be intuitive, wise, and you have to be a Maven, someone who tests the integrity of his Chochmah. Now, these two criteria actually make sense, right? To be a judge, you know the halachas. The first 4 or 5, Anshe Chaya, Yirei Elokim, Anshe Emes, and Ebatza, they're all nice characteristics, but they're all about character. A Chacham and a Maven is legal. To be a judge on a case, you have to understand the law. You have to know the law. And you have to know how to interpret the law. And you also have to have a feel for the law. Knowing the law, understanding the law, interpret, that's a Maven. Having a feel, have a sense of what the law is, that's a Chacham. One of the biggest issues that faces America today is that we have a constitution that was written 2.5 centuries ago. And our constitution is our legal code. The laws of America are based on the laws of the constitution. And there are issues that we all know are terribly, terribly volatile. Just to give you one example, the argument that's been going on now for 50 years about the place of God in our civilization, in our society. What is the argument about? Everybody is quoting the same constitution. One guy is quoting the constitution as the proof that we must have God in public schools, the silent prayer, etc., etc. The other guy is quoting the same constitution, and he's saying, no, freedom doesn't allow for God to interfere. What's the difference? The answer to that question is they want to know the spirit of the people who wrote the Constitution. The words you can explain any way you want. Those people who sat in Philadelphia and drank enough wine to put a cow to sleep and made our laws, what were they thinking? The founding fathers. So one guy is saying, we can't just interpret the law based on the words, we have to know the spirit of the law based on the founding fathers. And the other guy is saying, no, the law. The first is the Chacham, the second is the Maven. A good judge needs both. He interprets the law is written, and he infers, he tries to figure out what's the spirit of the law. To be a judge, you have to want emes. If you don't want emes, it's a rachmanus on you, and the rachmanus, the people that you punish, that you paskin, you have the lives of people in your hand. So again, Chacham means intuition, Maven means thorough analysis. Rashi says Chacham means you judge a case when it comes to you. A Maven means somebody, if you have no case, you go look for cases. Tzazeh, both a Chacham and a Maven means people who are expert at law. Very simple. The technical part of the law and the spirit of the law. And the last criteria Rabbi say is the Yeduim. And Yeduim means people that are well known. One of the requirements for being a judge is that people know who you are. Or to say it in the language of America, you have a record. When they want to appoint somebody to a higher court, what are the first thing they do? They look at his record. How did this person vote in all of his legal cases in the past? And did he legislate from the bench? Did he use the court as a way of getting what he wants politically? Or did he interpret the law based on the principles of the Constitution? A good judge can give a law which is 180 degrees opposite of what he personally believes. That's his job. He interprets the law. So if you don't know what the guy thinks, you can bring a guy and make him the Supreme Court justice straight out of law school. Obviously he doesn't have a lot of experience, he doesn't have a lot of knowledge, and the ikid is he doesn't have a reputation. He's not known. And when you're choosing a judge, one of the things you have to do is know who he is, know how he rules, see if he has a reputation of being a good judge, and only then you can put him on the court. Those are 7 rules. Anshe Chaya, you can't bribe him. Yirei Elokim, he's so God-fearing that he'll even try to settle things out of court. Anshe Emes, his nature is to look for truth. Sainei Bata, he hates what money does to people, including himself. Okay. Anoshim, Tzadikim. Chachamim, he has good intuition. Nevoinim, he's thorough in his analysis. And then the other thing that Rashi says, maybe the other stuff. And Yeduim means people know who you are. You want to have a good judge, you have to have all of those 7 rules. So Rashi says from the Sifri, Yisra gave Moshe 7 criteria, and Moshe found only 3 of them. Moshe could not create judges that had all 7 criteria. He found only 3, which is so tragic. If 3,000 years ago, Moshe then couldn't find the Ish Emes, Asaynei Batze, Anoshim, Chachamim, V'Yeduim, is only found Tzadikim who have intuition and they are well known. Moshe Rabbeinu then could not find judges who could meet all 7 criteria that yesterday gave. And what did Moshe do? What did Moshe do? Anybody? What did he do? He made them judges. No, he made them judges. He said, this is what we got. This is what we're going to go with. He didn't say, sorry, Shver, nobody meets all your criteria going back to me. he said we have to look for 7 characteristics. The most he found was 3. And he said, Yisrei, the Eibishter agrees with you, I shouldn't judge myself. He couldn't find judges who met all 7 criteria. And he said, if this is the best we got, this is what we're going to go with, which is an unbelievable lesson. There's an optimum and ideal way to do anything. Right? There's an optimum and ideal way to choose leaders. There's an optimum and ideal way to choose, the Rebbe once told Moshe Herson, I'm not the Maharal. I can't create people. I work with what I got. I'm not the Maharal. I can't create people. I work with what I got. Moshe Rabbeinu is not the Maharal. He can't create people. He worked with what he had. Yisra gave him 7 criteria. He found 3 of them, and he went with it. Now, finally, one last thing. In one of the Torah Shleimus, he brings 7 other ones. I gotta go. The boys are waiting on this. Chochma, Yira, Anova. This one we didn't have yet. Humility. Sheinei Mamin, which we had. Avas Emes, he loves the truth. And another one, which was out on an earlier list, Avas Habrias, he likes people. And number 7, Baal Shem Tov, a person with a good name. This is another medrash, which also lists the 7 criteria. 2 of them are different. Anova, to be a judge, you have to be humble. And Avas Habrias, if you want to judge people, you can't just love God and the law, you have to actually love people. It's another medrash, it's another list of 7. And I don't know which ones he took off, but it's also consistent with Yisai's idea that he gave Moshe Rabbeinu 7 criteria for how to choose a judge, and Moshe found only 3 of them. Okay, that was a good class.